ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It's Logos Roundtable. With me, Jan Irvin, we've got Chris Mayville back with us, Mark Warhol, and Caleb Thomas, and we're actually doing part 2. I survived LASIK surgery this week. My vision is still a little bit out. I'm going back and forth between some cheap reader glasses to be able to see. So if I make funny faces and looks like it's because my vision's going crazy. Chris doesn't have great vision either, just FYI for those who wonder about...
No
So
LASIK here, but I will be making funny faces and all.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe I'll just try to moderate tonight and see how it goes. But Mark, why don't you start off?
Sure. So I guess the big question would be, why are we talking about the changing faces of family and why that's important? And it's not important if you don't find family and the culture that you are raised in important. If you want to join as one, as a community, and let the government or education form your children, and then you reproduce at a certain controlled number, then it isn't important. But for those who look back and say, hey, I remember the days of what family meant. I remember what freedom meant. I remember what that importance of that hierarchy of learning from wisdom from within your own family and culture. Not that you can't learn from other cultures, but if you surrender that, then I think we're going in the right direction. But if you say there is something important about, I say, maintaining the family and in alignment to natural law, then we've got to look at, well, then how have we gotten here and why has it been so decimated? Why is our spirit and our desire to have children because we're so afraid of this world, right? How illogical is that? That the people who want to bring love in this world and live in truth are the ones who said, but I won't bring a child in this world. Well, if you don't have a child that you're bringing in this world that you're going to teach to live in truth and spread love, then you're not participating in the solution. And so when we go through this and we look at it, if you could arm yourself, because it's not your fault if you aren't aware of the truth, you're still going to suffer consequences. But when you do find truth and you start to understand that you were programmed through these television, through the music, through school, through mass media, through then just being a part of a collective, if you can't understand how that program has formed your thought process, then you're going to continue in the own decimation of your own culture and belief system, because the rate of reproduction isn't even at a mathematical possibility at this point.
Caleb.
Okay, so last time we didn't get through our entire notes. We said we were going to do a part 2, so that's what we're doing today. As far as the outline that I'm looking at, it looks like the next topic we were getting onto was television and the entertainment industry, and talk just a little bit about that, hit that real quick.
Very taboo.
Yeah, it's kind of a taboo subject, but it needs to be mentioned. I think we mentioned it just at the very end last time.
No,
but,
it's actually only taboo now, whereas even a decade ago it wasn't taboo. But with all of the PC BS going on these days, it's taboo now.
So what? Just quickly to kind of overview what I'm talking about when I say the sort of infiltration of the television network and the Hollywood movies and all the entertainment industry, pretty much in general. You start to see this agenda being pushed for the normalization of gender role flipping, homosexuality being way more represented as being overrepresented. Like, transsexuals and homosexuals, these are very small portions of the population. Yet for some reason we see this huge amount of content discussing and showing the normalization of this stuff. So there's that.
Every TV show, every movie, everything, they have to have one out of place character in every sort of situation, job position, whatever. And you can see that they're heavily marketing this onto the public. And so much of the public is unaware of the social engineering agenda behind it. And the ultimate goal of them promoting it is eugenics.
Exactly. Eugenics. Yep. Or even on top of that, dysgenic.
Well,
They're trying.
it's always and that always comes up. So the group promoting eugenics, it's
Yep.
always eugenics for them and dysgenics for everyone else. So
Exactly.
for the elite, for the Huxley family, for Margaret Singer and all of these people promoting this stuff, it's eugenics.
Yep.
For the victims getting crushed and killed and destroyed by it, it's dysgenics.
Yes, sir. So what you see here on television, another example, just to kind of show people what I'm talking about with the gender role thing. So go look at all the television shows throughout history and just watch the progressive nature to the television shows. And we obviously, I guess I shouldn't say obviously because not a whole lot of people know this, but there are patterns in who owns all of these companies and all the production companies, the advertising industries. They're all the same people. So of course, you have to ask the question why. What are they doing here? And what are these patterns? You have to start noticing these things, like all the fathers in all these television shows. They're trying to make them look like retards. All the popular shows.
Yeah.
Think about them. You got like
Yeah.
Family Guy, right? You
Homer
got
Simpson.
Yeah, Homer Simpson. Yeah, I mean, we could spend a whole show just talking about examples of this. So
Absolutely.
what do you guys think? Anything?
Well, I was
Well,
watching one of those old who is it, John Candy films, where he's on the woods on a vacation in the woods with his family, and it's like you're watching this movie, and despite the swearing, it's actually a really wholesome show. It's pro family. The teenager, hooks up with his dream girl. The two brothers or cousins that who's Dan Aykroyd. They get along and they make up. And it's just you see the contrast from movies from like the 80s or early 90s to today. And today you don't really see any wholesome type, material out there. It's all, and people, you sit there, oh, well, what's wrong with homosexuality? It's their choice or whatever. But when you get that there's an agenda behind this and it's being marketed to increase this type of behavior, to wipe out certain groups, like in the database, and I'll pull that up here. There's a the Jaffa memo regarding Planned Parenthood, and they specifically discuss in this document to increase the promotion of homosexuality. So here, I'm just pulling that document up here. And so when you see this document, then it starts really making sense here. Encourage increased homosexuality. That's right there. This is a leaked memo from March 11, 1969 by Frederick J. Jaffa, Vice President of Planned Parenthood. So why would Planned Parenthood, a eugenics, there's that word again, a eugenics organization, why would they be putting in their memos, their interoffice memos, to increase or encourage increased homosexuality in a society? And then when you think of Planned Parenthood and you think of mass genocides, Planned Parenthood has murdered, like, as of 2015, I think it was 57 million people. And they say, there's a drop in population. We don't have enough people to fill jobs. We have to bring in all of these immigrants. Well, why are we murdering 57 million people over the last, 40, 50 years since, I don't remember the exact years, since abortions were legalized? This is mass genocide, and getting people to accept genocide or infanticide as something that's okay. Here's this gift of life
That's it.
that you're blessed with, and I'm a father, and my son's right there in his room. Mark is a father. And, this is a blessing. And you just, you gain so much as a parent and in growth and everything. So they're stifling all of that, getting people to think that being a parent is going to take away from your life, not add to it. It's absurd.
Here's the thing. My thing is, if we're going to talk about some causes that I say cast spells on society that destroyed family, love relationships, self-respect, one of the biggest one is the abortion. Is that we've equivocated, we create equal grounds on morality and law, and we feel that I'm not breaking the law. Well, the law says I could do it. Example. Going on right now is like, if you just look at divorces, or if you look like when someone dies, you're like, hey, they didn't have a will. I could take it all from my siblings because I was the executor. Well, just because you can legally do it doesn't mean it's morally right or within natural law. That's going to destroy families. Yeah. So you'll look at all these things that people look at what's going on, and they're missing that whole point of staying in truth.
Yeah, it's inversion. It's virtuous now to shout your abortion, to get out there and tell everybody how proud you are to have had an abortion, and it's virtuous to be a transsexual, or to be a cat, or if you want to be a cat, or you can be a grown middle-aged man and pretend to be a 6-year-old girl. And we all have to just accept that unreality, the absolute idea that we have to ignore our reality to accept your fantasy. And that's where the world we live in. And unfortunately, in Canada, that's even more of a, this whole gender thing. You can claim to be, there's how many genders are there, whatever you are, we have to call you this. Is this absolutely idiotic.
And if you call one of these Fruit Loops by the wrong gender, then you can be prosecuted for this crap, and it's like
human rights tribunal,
right? And they
That's
make
insane.
and they make this stuff
human
up.
Rights tribunal.
California passed last year. We have this Governor Moonbeam here that's a complete idiot. I've had the misfortune of meeting him, but he passed a law last year where hospital workers must address people by the gender that they want to be addressed by, not their natural genders. And there's 2 genders. There's only 2. And okay. Sometimes you might have a hermaphrodite in there or whatever, but there's male and female. All life, all production from all species, except for maybe worms, comes from that. And amoebas or something.
Shouldn't we be using the word sex? Wasn't gender a weaponized term that came out much later in the discussion?
Probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sex. So what is your sex? You're either male or you're female. That's it. And you can lie to yourself. I used to know this person from Argentina, and she had a friend who was a woman who wanted to be called a man, and she insisted that everybody else go around and lie that she's a man. And it's like,
pretend.
It make everybody else pretend and go along with your delusion. It's like, you know what? I am a man. You are not one by any stretch of your wildest imagination. And I refuse to lie to you for that. And of course, these people didn't want to talk to me anymore because I didn't want to go along with this ridiculous charade. Right.
You're insensitive.
I'm being insensitive because I'm not going along with their lies.
Because you're fixed to reality, and they don't want that. And this is absolute mind control. If I heard about an experiment where they would bring people into a room, and they would have lines on a chalkboard, and they would have a group of people sitting there, and they would say, "What's the longest line?" And they'd always have the individual, apparently the one that they're experimenting on, a few of them down, so that the first person would pick the shortest one. And when it got to them, the peer pressure, they would choose, either reality, the longest line, or they would choose to go along with the crowd for peer pressure. And, that becomes mind control. Is that not?
Absolutely.
I could be wrong.
Well, and there was the experiment when they walk in the classroom and they would get the kids to think that 2 plus 2 is 3, and somebody walk in, and everybody else in the class would say it's 3. And then like 90% of the people that would walk into the middle of that under the peer pressure would fold and say it's 3 also rather than 4, And it's just like, come on, people, use your brains. There is truth. Truth does exist. Truth isn't relative. We can all verify truth. That's what the trivium is for. Yes, there is absolute truth. Nature never changes. God cannot lie, etc.
And it's not comfortable always either. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, and you have to accept the fact that you're in an uncomfortable situation and just firmly fix yourself to reality, or you can choose to detach and just go along with the flow. But, are you doing yourself a favor that way? I don't know, maybe not. But I find that this is the world seems to be in this condition. Like, you can talk to people and they will just deny reality. So
absolutely. And what they've also done, like I notice with a lot of these millennials, that they actually think that intelligence is how up you are on your social justice warrior issues. It's not actual intelligence of learning. It's, do you discriminate against gender fluid people or trans fluid this? When I was a kid, trans fluid is what you put in your car.
Why is this working? Why does this work? Someone posted, it's life imitating art, or is art imitating life? Well, I mean, if you use the trivium, the answer to that is so logical. Why would people spend millions of dollars for 30 seconds on a Super Bowl commercial if they didn't know that life imitates the art, that we want to be accepted, we want to be like the cool gang? We get all information from the television. When you can look at the destruction of family, or if you just look at the percent of births out of wedlock and when it began, and then you connect that to the mind control machine of television and school changes, you start to see correlations. This isn't to say, hey, this is how to fix it, but to at least acknowledge why some of us are clueless about how we got here. Let's look at it.
And we're way back. These people are so far ahead of us. They're targeting everything to children. All this internet stuff. Who's on the internet most? It's, children are on the internet as much as, more than I am. And I tell you, these videos and all this stuff, and in the classroom, they have the trans or the drag queens coming in and whatever, the idea that this is normal is what they're presenting. And so you see the girl talking on the TED Talk about, pedophilia is just, something we should accept and or something to that effect. It was a pretty disturbing TED Talk.
Obviously,
these people marketed to younger people,
and these people don't have children, and it's like, yeah, you actually think if you actually bred and brought a life into this world that you would want some sick piece of pedophile messing with your kids? No, you put a shotgun in their mouth and you blow their head off. Simple as that. No discussion.
Just the idea of what's going on in these pride parades where you see these children being exposed to stuff. I just find that shocking that, that it's out in public like that and nobody's doing anything about it. So,
Chris, they think that these children's already come into the world with a developed soul, and they don't understand the etymology of soul as psyche or mind. It's between the temples, I say a lot. And so as that child is learning, they're learning from you, whether you live in truth or you live in lie. If you live in lie, that becomes their truth. Just look at the fairy tales that we've told our kids just with Easter bunnies and tooth fairies and Santa Claus. I mean, talk about the inversion, right? To make you feel like you love your kids, you got to participate in deceiving them. So, the soul develops. And when you have a kid at a gay parade thing saying, I'm doing this, and everyone's going, yeah, gyrated, you own it. That's an old spirit in that kid. No, maybe it's an old demonic spirit that got cast upon that kid because of your lack of protection and your introduction into inversion. Have we always had it in culture? Yeah, we've always had it in culture. And you know what? Even people like us, we're weird, right? We're different because we're seeking truth. People are like, you're weird. I own it. But what if you're going to live outside nature and can never have a baby, and you like to do things that are a little bit deviant than what we see in nature, especially in the numbers, why can't you own it? Why do you have to say that? We all have to say that that's a totally normal behavior and accept it, and we can't have opinions on it.
Yeah, I agree. Knock yourself out. You want to call yourself a dolphin? You can call yourself a dolphin all day long. Just don't ask me to call you a dolphin, because you're not. These people, they are just men and women who are, pretending to be or who wish to be something else, and that's fine. It's just you're not that. We have to make the distinction. It's not the same thing. They're trying to drag everything along, and it's been little increments along the way. And I'm 51. I can look back. We were talking about TV. You look back to Archie Bunker. Back in
Mayberry. How about that?
Go right back. You see how the father figure has totally been just made into a joke. And even America's Dad, Bill Cosby, now he's a rapist, and they've effectively killed him too. Not to say he doesn't have it coming. I'm just saying, as people looked up to him, these people of all, it's like the Disney stars. They come along, they're cute kids, they make them into whores, and then they destroy them, and we all watch with eating popcorn and what's Britney Spears up to tonight. It's the same thing over and over.
Well, look, see, Caleb, don't you have research on the CIA and its dealings with the family unit? Because I know the CIA jumped into media and news and TV production like crazy, like dumping billions of dollars into it.
Well, yeah, actually, the thing that you'll start to realize is it isn't just the CIA. It's these groups of people throughout history that move from one space to another, and they infiltrate all these areas inside of a culture, and then they play on the psychology that they understand, and it's all based on lies, and that's why you see so many contradictions in everything. There's it's all appeals to emotion. They're trying to put emotion above truth, as opposed to so now all of a sudden telling the truth is like,
well see, because if there's no truth, there can be no lies, and if there's no truth, then there's no good, and then there's no bad. So this is their whole agenda. It's moral relativism.
There's no logic either. There's no logos.
Yeah. So as far as the CIA, so we talked about how Margaret Sanger was involved in the CIA. Okay, so Margaret Sanger, so Playboy, all the pornography, and all this stuff has the same people. If you do enough digging into pornography, which we'll get into later, you'll see the same people, same groups of people, the same ties. The CIA has the same influential people coming from these groups, all throughout history. If you read E. Michael Jones's book, he calls it the Jewish revolutionary spirit. You see that it's like a revolving door. All these revolutions are the same thing.
Yeah.
It's been that way since the beginning. They figured out if they could do this, they got away with it once, and they were like, well, let's just keep doing this. So they infiltrate and they just turn everything upside down, like we've always talked about. So of course, feminism and pornography and the Hollywood industry, everything we're talking about has the same patterns with the same nefarious groups of people. So,
and who benefits is like, why would they spend money to take over the gatekeepers of the mass messaging and spell casting, and then put in something that benefits families and independence and freedom? So, everything they do is to destroy that and create dependency, to create fear. I swear, I think it was
socialism, etc.
Oh, yeah. I think when the reality TV came in, when it was the beginning of the programming of the self-superstar, the selfie superstar. And so when reality TV is like, wow, I could be a reality person. I just have to be more debased than Cookie or those other people in Jersey Shore. And then it also did something great. Instead of the old programming of, man, can I live up to that man? Can I live up to that father and that family? It's like, holy shit, I thought I was bad. I'm not as bad as those guys on reality TV. So it gave you a false sense of truth. It was just so disgusting. And then it went from reality TV, then that was in the sitcoms, and then that has become life. So we see once again life imitating art, and all those fools that keep saying, oh, art imitates life, just don't understand, if not dug deep enough to know how spells are cast and who controls the casting spell mechanisms.
Yeah, and a lot of these shows are really set up to be not to work as groups or as friends, but to make deals and backstab, because there's going to be one person who's going to win at the end of it. And, they're going to outwit everybody else and deceive them. And all these really bad things, that are not beneficial. Oh, they're nice at this point in time, but at some point, they're going to have to betray them here or there, because someone's got to win. It can't just be, hey, let's just all work together for something. It's a very competitive thing that I saw right across with music, with the in all these Big Brother and whatever the Survivor and all these shows. I didn't watch any of these. I'm just watching it. I just know of them from commercials.
Fake reality.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And what's more reality? And you watch these things, and they have deplorable people, and you feel good about yourself. The Hollywood housewives, or the housewives of this or that. You watch that, and you go, "Hey, I'm way better than them." Yeah, that's what reality is anymore. And then you can go on YouTube and do it yourself if you want.
It's consensus reality now.
There you
go.
go.
Yes.
So I was just going to say earlier, I said Margaret Sanger. I didn't mean to say Margaret Sanger. She was the founder of Planned Parenthood.
Yes, Fabian socialist.
Eugenicist.
And by the way, Margaret Sanger was highly influenced, but she may not have been in that whole group, but she was definitely highly influenced by Marx and other Fabian socialists.
Yeah.
And her, just read her work. You'll see how it fits right in. She apparently she even married a Jew. She had half of the people that were influenced in her circle were all Marxist socialists. So look into that as well. But yeah, I meant to say Gloria Steinem before. So
yes.
Okay. Well, well, she didn't found Planned Parenthood though, but I have somewhere here, I have Margaret Sanger and Julian Huxley's personal letters promoting eugenics, and they wanted to award her, Singer, I always forget, they wanted to award her some big award for, all of the human lives and families that she had destroyed. They name these people heroes, or, if you live in England, they'll give you a title like Sir, make you, they'll knight you because you've destroyed lots of families. You create the British invasion or something. That was an actual invasion, but what people don't get is they're invading our minds with their crappy satanic Beatles pop music, And so it's all of this stuff goes to break down the family.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why? And again, why do they want to break down the family, gentlemen?
Well,
because the family is the enemy, the ultimate enemy of the people that we're talking about here.
The source of strength.
Yeah, it's
freedom.
The socialist, the one who wants to grow power and control over the nation. Obviously, they're going to have to deal with the head of the snake, which is the family that glues it all together, right? So that's what all these little things that we're talking about. We could do a show all by themselves, because there's tons of grammar on every single little point, but they are all the one thing they all have in common is they attack and undermine the family, the nuclear family that we're talking about.
So I'm actually showing on screen a world tribute to Margaret Sanger. And this is from February 23, 1961. But this is a document signed by Julian Huxley. That's his real signature down there. This is a real document that I pulled from Princeton. But you can see what they were doing. You can see that this is all promotion. For those of you who were waiting for the mention of a Huxley, there you go. Thank you, Polygonal and Gokuchi and Anthony, for the support tonight. So, for those of you who wait for us to say the name Huxley to have a drink or whatever, there you go. I'm sure there's a few of you. So that's from the Arthur Kroc papers at Princeton's Mudd Library. But so this is all Julian Huxley's stuff on Margaret Sanger and these awards that they were planning on doing. So, it's real stuff. It's real planned social engineering. It's not that, these are just 4 white guys and they're against all of our freedom to shake our boobies in public and kill babies and have, sex with 50 men by the time we're 25. And, and they're just trying to suppress and control our good time. It's not like that. It's actually, we're showing how the social engineering works, where it comes from. We're discussing, we're trying to wake people up to how they're promoting this stuff, and even showing you some original primary citations of them doing it.
And I think it's ramping up even more as time goes. I think they ramp it up. And I know Caleb mentioned pornography earlier, and I was shocked to find the amount of like websites and that are dedicated to incest porn. And if you can go and look this stuff up, there's actual sites.
No thanks.
It's crazy. Like you'd be shocked at the number. So they're pushing this type of idea. You start seeing all these stories about female teachers having sex with their younger students. And of course, there's all kinds of pornography depicting that as well, sites that are dedicated to that type of thing. So, and not to say that it's specifically just to female teachers, of course, but I'm just saying that there have been more, I've seen more cases of that online. So I find that they're ramping things up. It's getting more and more out in the open. And I think that people are maybe in such a daze, or in such a state of I don't know, of control, that they are just,
No, they're hypnotized.
Yeah.
They're hypnotized into this right now. Look at talking to us. At least they're getting, a counter spell, and we're trying to arm them with tools to cast it off. But they are hypnotized. I mean, if you're still into that saying we won when your team won versus, wow, that was a great game, and appreciating sports. If you're still into talking all the time at work about TV shows instead of your real life and learning about one another and sharing about family struggles and successes, you're in that matrix, and you don't care. You've been programmed. You don't even know.
Yeah, when you're worshiping the works of men and not the works of God or the works of nature, I think you're following the wrong path. Men are fallible. So are the works of men. So great for entertainment, and sure, lots of useful tools. I'm not putting it down, but I'm saying a lot of people worship people like they worship celebrities. And for what? Just for being famous half the time.
Well, and you're told everybody's been told not to worship graven images. So why is everybody going around worshiping rock idols?
Yeah. Or rap,
rock idols. Get it? Rock idols.
Gotcha.
It's because why? It's because it's put in front of them. It's like if you put some crap
it's
food in front of your kid, they're gonna eat it.
It's it's peacocking, and they're giving false alphas out there, manufactured alphas out there to follow, rather than learning and developing, on their own.
Yeah, but look, let's families that have kids. I granted they're under the spell, and most of them have had crappy parents. I've been teaching long enough that I'm teaching the kids of the kids that were raising kids. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I understand and have compassion. But when you look at what's going on, you can't deny the changes that's taking place. And then you can't deny that they don't know how to control one kid. And I'm like, but you send it to me. I got 35 in this room, 35. Including that one kid that you and your husband can't control. So don't tell me that can't be controlled. He has, because he's doing it in my classroom. So it's just this total denial that they're allowed just to be, I'm not good at it. Well, get good at it, because I wasn't good at everything that I do that I'm good at.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
It's like, okay, so when you raise a child, and for those of us who are parents, you get this because the child, when they start to walk, they get up, they walk a few feet, they fall down, and they go, "Wah!" and they cry. And then they get up again, and they try again. They walk a few more feet, they fall again, down again, and they cry. Sometimes they fall and land on stuff, but after a few months, they start getting pretty good. And after, several months of this, then you see they're starting to run, and so they go from crawling to walking. And it didn't just... Most kids, they didn't just stand up and walk and then, run a marathon the next day. They actually had practice and they got good at it. So, if you think about, did any of you get up and walk and run within a minute? Anybody out there? No. Then you get it. Everything takes practice.
Jan, even parenting, right? Jan, like my first kid, my love McKinley, my firstborn, dealt with me as a rookie, clueless as shit. And then my second born got a little bit better. My third born, now I have more wisdom. I make less mistakes. My fourth one is getting not only the love and the wisdom of me and his beautiful mom, but his kids, I mean, his siblings are living in truth. Look at the power he gets. This is why when you don't have big families, you don't get that. You don't learn that. So even when a child has to crawl first and then learn, a parent, man, I didn't know shit when I started. I mean, I'm embarrassed of some of the mistakes I made. Seriously, brothers. I mean, thank God there wasn't reality TV, but you apologize, you make amends, and then you get better. But when you don't ever have a kid, you never grow from that. You never do. You don't have a family, you don't grow from that.
Well, and that's why
anything else.
That's why I continually call it extended adolescence or arrested development. When, you know, people used to have families in their 20s, like Chris was discussing earlier, his friend just had their first child at age 51.
Congratulations, Paul. Congratulations,
That's
Sandy.
life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but, you know, and we're not knocking that, but this is the state of the situation. We're trying to bring awareness to it so that people aren't falling for that trap. You know, Caleb is young and, you know, looking for a wife, and, you know, so Caleb can get out there and, you know, start, you know, find a good Christian woman and have a family or something, dude. I mean, you know, I wouldn't look anywhere else these days, but, you know, don't go to a bar and expect to find quality.
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things that is important to me, since I would say that I'm very highly case selected, in that I really want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row. I'm not going to be just that type of person that goes out, makes immediate decisions for gratification, and, you know, I think really far ahead in advance, and I try to make sure that I don't make life-changing mistakes. I want to make sure I plan it out as best I can, even though, you know, I don't want to be paranoid about it or anything like that. However, you know, the thing is, in this world, it's really hard to find like-minded people when you're not average. See, the thing is, the world is built for average people, it seems like. So, and unfortunately, the average people are really easily swayed and controlled, like we've been talking about. So, the interesting thing about getting out there into the market and, you know, trying to do your best to find another like-minded person is that, you know, the higher you climb up into the self-work, the idea of finding somebody who is willing to do the same type of work. That's all. I'm not looking for a perfect person, right? But I at least want somebody who's willing to take accountability, be responsible, has the same type of vision as far as
work on being a better person.
Yeah, be more case selected, which case selected just to me mostly means real super high investment in parenting, so that I can raise, you know, a few really good kids to grow up and have to thrive, as opposed to you know, I don't know, as opposed to all the other, you know, possibilities out there.
Caleb,
having multiple kids without in single parenthood and all that.
Do you think it's outside natural law waiting till your 30s? I mean, I got married at 32, and it was barely, I was hanging by a string because of all the self-worth and the narcissism of living by yourself and doing what you want. Mm-hmm. It almost became like, how am I going to find someone who's going to have that level? So is it in natural law? Don't you think that when you have the same morals that will guide your growth, and you decide to do it together when you're younger, you grow together? Finding someone who's going to have those things you're looking for, the older you get, becomes so much more difficult. And I hear that all the time from people in their late 30s.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, you know, our selected people definitely get sexualized a lot younger because they're not as worried about the high investment in family. And that's what you see in the average people. Unfortunately, it never used to be like that, but we're definitely making a trend toward the other direction. And that's kind of why I decided I needed to start talking about this type of stuff. Because I believe if people knew the differences about the life decisions you can make, you would postpone it a little bit. You'd postpone your gratification, and you would try to make better better choices, more of the conservative type ideology than the liberal type ideology of just now. There is, who cares about the future? Let's just live, and there's no purpose to life.
Sex,
and
drugs,
whatnot.
rock and roll. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Listen, but postponing's tough. My wife just shot a couple that just just turned in their 20s.
She's a photographer, for clarity.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they got
and
they're trying to live in Logos. And they said, "Damn, we can't wait. We can't wait." So they got married. That they've been dating for a couple of years, but they know they're young. So when you say put it off, I'm not saying that you have to do that, but for them, I love it. There are solutions, because telling a man to wait to his 30s so he finds the right one and yet stay pure is ignoring natural law of that number one button we have that says push this button. So that's why I think delaying marriage, I think, is scary for families, because of the finding someone to make it work at that stage is tough.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. Like, one of the things I think about all the time is, from a philosophical standpoint, is this how we are naturally according to natural law? Or does this make more sense that, yeah, we're forced into this situation because of this, because of the situation that we have in our culture going on right now, all the stuff we're talking about, and we're forced to adapt to this, which is a very negative thing, obviously. So, the solution, maybe if we ended up getting to the point where we actually, if we go back, if you think about it, because we're getting worse. We're not getting better. This whole progressive thing isn't getting better. It's getting worse. So when you go back, you start to realize we did a lot of these things for tradition, for a reason. And I think that's what's interesting to me about studying about my ancestry, about how they used to do things, back in the day. And, what I keep seeing is, I wouldn't necessarily have to do some of these things where I wait. It wouldn't be as hard to find like-minded people if we didn't have this situation going on right now. And a lot of this stuff was prophesized, if you want to believe that it was prophecy. Mm-hmm. But a lot of this stuff was, even you can even go back and look into like the protocols of the elders of Zion. I know it's a controversial book, but you'll see these trends through this type of thinking. And it's really this R. That's why I talk about the whole RK gene selection theory so much, is that's what makes most sense to me when I try to explain it to somebody else. What it is the people who can't compete have to come in and lie, cheat, and steal so that they can thrive. And the way that they do that is they flip everything upside down. So we're living in an inverted society. So the anecdote is to do what
matrix.
So our job now is to reveal the lie. I truly believe that if I fight a little bit harder than my ancestors did, like just my grandfather, even in his generation, because we're in this situation now. We've kind of made our bed. We have to lie in it, and we have to deal with it. We have to accept responsibility and move forward. And the things that I see that are solutions are to go back, reinvert these things, talk about these things that, okay, not just thrive, not just appeal to people's emotions. Let's tell the truth, even if it hurts people's feelings. And possibly we can reverse the situation where people like me have a hard time investing in a future. Maybe it'll be a lot easier because it'll be normal, as opposed to, like I said, I believe exposing the lie will kind of work itself out, because the biggest problem we have in society, the reason why people fall for these traps, they get stuck in these Tinder apps and the pornography and, the television and movies,
Facebook,
and, idolizing all these things. And, they become what they see. It's like monkey see, monkey do. Well, if I truly believe, I'm not playing the victim here, because I don't believe in playing the victim and just blaming everybody else. I believe in taking some responsibility for this. But I believe if you expose the lie to people and they get to make the decision themselves, a lot of people will sort of align into their natural states, and then you won't have so much confusion. And that'll take a lot of the stuff that we're talking about down to the minority, and we will be the majority. And that's, I think that, well, that's the
issue is that we have, us and truth on one side, and then you have the CIA and the agenda pushers and the eugenicists on the other side. So what
Right.
has to be done in the interim is we have to make the CIA and these people that do this stuff, we have to make them impotent,
Well,
like
listen,
little
how do you?
flaccid little wings that can't do anything. And so, and this is why we put out the trivium method almost a decade ago now, to level the playing field so that, people could begin to see how this operation is being run against society. The sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, all of the TV, all of the crap that they're pushing out there. And once you see through that veil, you can't unsee it. And then you can, you're able to protect yourself and your family from it. But, it's going to take a process of making the intelligence community as a whole completely inept, completely flaccid, so that they have no control over us. And welcome, Steven Sorensen. He made it tonight. So it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, we can have 5 people in here. Ta-da!
Yay.
What's up, Steven?
Hello,
Hey,
Steven.
everyone.
Hey, I'm not
Congratulations.
I'm not as optimistic as you guys. I think that Bertrand Russell brought it up, and the technological advantages, and they know how to tie it into physiological dopamine stimulation with the emotives and belonging to groups and the manipulation. It's so advanced now. So the only thing you could do is, hey, we're trying to create some balance, life's homeostasis. Bless you. Join our team, but you got to turn the TV off. And if they don't turn the TV off to at least learn the trivium first, they're going to be under the spell. I just don't see it. People awakening if you're still getting your information from those spokes, that the same gatekeepers that we talk about control.
So I just wanted to read this comment, and then I think Steven should jump in and go through some of his notes that we didn't get to cover last time or this time. So Natty Nasty says, you take away their family, you take away their community, you take away their means of livelihood, or incentivize repression. Then you replace what you took from them with fake surrogates. Sorry, my eyesight's still going in and out. So that really is it, though. And so what they've done is they've taken away family, they've taken away all of these things, and you give them social media, you give them sex, drugs, rock and roll. We get to hear the same crappy rock songs over and over every single day. I'm 47, and most of these songs, there isn't a day I haven't freaking heard them. You can't go into a grocery store or anywhere, and everybody's like tapping along, and you're like, really, do I have to hear this crap one more time? Can we get Chris Mayville to rap out some original tunes here or something? But Steve, why don't you jump in? So we weren't expecting you, Steve. It's his anniversary tonight, him and his lady. So congratulations on that, Steve.
Happy
Thanks,
anniversary.
John. Yeah,
Happy anniversary.
we were just playing some games and listening to the show, and he said, go ahead and hop on and say what you want to say, because I've been sitting here commenting and and like, oh man, I wish I was in there to be able to say what I got on this. But
Tell her we said thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Woo.
Yeah, she hears, so that's good. So yeah, I will take the mic for a little bit. I'm coming from the education side of family and the state intervention there. Really my first topic that I got into researching was the education of American, like the history of American education. And I just started uncovering tons of really interesting stuff, because it's all about what age, should we start teaching people? And of course the age is, before 4. And so what some of the really great quotes are from the beginning days of school, where they're like, what can the Christians do? What can their Sunday school do against our 5 days a week and 8-hour days of education to be able to deter our humanist morals and whatnot against their Christian morals? And so it was a huge undermining of Christianity. However, I just want to go back to the book about the impact of science on society by Bertrand Russell. There's a ton of really good information in here, but I'm going to just read a quote from chapter 2. And he's talking about the future of humanity and some of the newer inventions and practices that are going to be taking place. And this is the quote. It says, "I think the subject which will be of most importance politically is mass psychology. Mass psychology," this is in 1930 something, 1940s, based off of the talks that he's been giving over the couple decades in different colleges. So he goes, "The subject which will be of most importance politically is mass psychology. Mass psychology is, scientifically speaking, not a very advanced study, and so far its professors have not been in universities. They have been advertisers, politicians, and above all, dictators. This study is immensely useful to practical men, whether they wish to become rich or to acquire the government. It is, of course, as a science founded upon individual psychology, but hitherto it has employed rule of thumb methods which were based upon a kind of intuitive common sense. Its importance has been enormously increased by the growth of modern methods of propaganda. Of these, the most influential is what is called education." So Bertrand Russell is here ousting education as the most influential modern method of propaganda. So let's just look into what has education been up to since its inception, especially in America. We can go all the way back to 1787 to the Northwest Ordinance, which was written up then. Article 3, though, reads that religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Which is, so, I know constitutional Americans, and these are old views, and why should we care about these? Because they're from a completely different time. But
Where
this
you
is
don't care about family and taking care of your own first. You got to take care of the people on the other side of the planet more than.
And who needs religion? It's all just a bunch of.
It's all just a bunch of hooey if you don't get that. God is truth, and so what they do is they have presented a false image of religion so that people don't even read the Bible and read the sacred text, read the Quran, read the Book of Mormon, read the Old and New Testaments, read the Papal, read them all. And understand what these books say, and read, even the gospel text, gospel of truth. What's it talking about? The gospel of truth. Let me think on that. So then when you get that it's all about truth versus lies, and that's why they want you to believe that truth doesn't exist, therefore if truth doesn't exist, God doesn't exist, and therefore do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, or is the whole in the law, I should say, for those who actually believe that crap, it's the whole in the law. But so, up on the screen here, when you were reading that, I was showing the Fabian Society because Bertrand was a Fabian. And, Do
you actually have evidence for that? I've been looking for some. Supposedly, he was the president of the Fabian.
Yeah, I'll have to check, and I show that he influenced the creation of the Tavistock Institute as well. It should be in my notes, though, in the brain database, in these links here. But he was a big eugenicist, member of the Fabian Socialists, as was Aldous Huxley. Now, he's certainly running in the same group. We've got Aldous Huxley here, Annie Besant. I mean, these are the same people that we're always hitting on. David Rockefeller, here's the Frankfurt School, George Orwell, who was Aldous Huxley's student. Sorry for all you playing the drinking game. You're probably getting pretty hammered by now. But and here we have John Dewey, John Maynard Keynes. These are London School of I think
economics.
London School of Economics, and all these guys were over there too. So all of this stuff ties in, though, and you have to do your grammar not just on what you think you want to believe, but their backgrounds, their ties, what they were actually teaching, and look if there's an agenda. And if you can't see the fallacies in your thinking, you're not going to be able to see how they're fooling you.
let me just quick and get some more facts out here, which are really interesting based off of what you just said. So I've tried to get the audience familiar with the headspace of the government at the time of America's start. So when education would be starting there, they're still talking about religion and morality in school, but it's talking more so about conventional religion and conventional morality, not the new age sort of, you can shift from this to that. You know, if you want to be a Buddhist this week and a Muslim the next.
A transgender religio.
Yeah, trans religious. You know, one day you're feeling like you should be chic, and the next day you're feeling like Discordianism is more your cup of tea. It wasn't like that. You know, you had a very specific way of living that worked, and you stuck with that because it worked.
And that's how cultures were created, and you went by your culture because that was the cohesion, that was the glue that kept your family and your history, your lineage alive. So of course the Terrence McKenna's and the MK Ultra folks out there working for the CIA are going to tell you that culture is bad and family is bad. We got to get rid of the culture. We got to have monoculture. You know, take ayahuasca and mushrooms and follow Maria Sabina and you'll be saved and you'll know it all. You know, and a lot of us fell for it. I fell for it, in my youth, and I've spent years exposing it all now.
So beginning in America, the education system, when they were teaching people to read and write, they had an intensive phonics method, which taught everyone the breakdowns of the words and the letters and all their different sounds separately. And then through that, you can create a word. So, like the word, I don't even know, morality, you could figure out moral is the root of that and whatnot. And you don't have to know the whole word itself, maintained religion and stuff. Yeah. So in 1823, that's when Thomas G, I'm not sure how his last name's pronounced, but Galido or something, he begins teaching the look-say whole word method, which is the complete reading of the word itself. So you can read cat, but you wouldn't be able to read catheter because you don't know how the letters are put together.
I actually went through this, Stephen, in my 28 years of teaching. We went into natural acquisition, and that's what you're talking about is whole language learning, where you see the word as a chunk, and then you just naturally acquire it. So it really took the pressure off us teachers because all we had to do was read and have them look at the words, and they would naturally acquire it. I mean, forget if they're into a genre they're not familiar with, and they actually have to sound out the word.
Arguably it's a efficient method for reading, but statistically speaking, as the whole word method started becoming more popular, literacy rates in America dropped. So at this time, a lot of people in America, the majority of people knew how to read and write. But overall in the entire world, less than 10% of people knew how to read and write in their native language. So right now, America is a leading force in being literate. As far as the rest of the globe is in the late 1700s, early 1800s. So once this dude starts putting out his method, literacy rates start dropping in America, but rising everywhere else because of the globalization of education. In the same time, I'm trying to just keep on these points and get them all.
That would be good in our old model for when we did test scores. That'd be good because we wanted to bridge the gap. So the only ways to bridge the gap is to slow down the ones at the top and bring them up like this. And we in schools, we should actually get awarded for bridging the gap and making the bell curve this way into this illogical. Everyone will be proficient by 2012.
So far right now, everyone in school is more so they're older. We don't have kindergartens yet in the early 1800s in America. What was really enticing for families was to get their kids because as a parent, you don't want your kid going and working in the factory and being so exhausted that they're falling asleep and getting beat by the factory managers or getting their limbs chopped off. It's more ideal as a parent to have your kid go somewhere where they're learning skills that are going to be able to help them create a business later on in life or provide a service to people, like getting a doctorate in medicine or something, or learning some sort of useful skill as opposed to going and working on these devices that are supposed to be saving labor but are causing families to have to give away their kids to the workers. So you'd much rather give it to a school. So in 1857 in New York is when we get kindergarten. And kindergarten comes out of New York. It's the same year that the National Education Association is founded, and they play a huge role in the development of education throughout the years. Just a few years before that, though, I don't know if we've ever read this quote on the show or not, but it's basically talking about, it's by Orestes Brownson, and he has it in his collective works, the works of Orestes Brownson. You can get that online if you just Google the title with PDF after it. It's on archive.org. It's a really interesting read. But basically it says that the great object was to get rid of Christianity and convert the churches into halls of science. They made open attacks on religion, tried to establish a system of state, national, from which all religion were to be excluded. And they were going to have kids at the years of like 1 and 1.5 to have them nursed, fed, clothed, and trained in schools at public expense. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, they don't even hide it. I mean, the thing we keep cracking up, I keep waking up to words, and it's kindergarten. I mean, it's the garden of kin, of children. And
so,
then,
Mark, what I've noticed over my reading is that I think these people were prideful and confident, and they didn't think that the peasants would figure out how to read or write, or that it would matter.
well, there's a power out of it when you could admit what you're doing in front of everybody, and you could put a warning label on the vaccines or whatever it is.
But at the same time,
They do it. They still go along with it.
Dude, these are not negative things to other people. To other people, they might be cheering on for this, you know, like, oh yeah, all the way back in 1829, we were trying to get rid of those damn Christians in their churches, and, you know, trying to get more educated, trying to get more science halls. Like, you'd have to get rid of the churches in order to do that.
Oh yeah, I mean, if your whole thing is to abolish the family, and you wanted to create a garden where you could control how the plant grows and how it's going to be, the soil's going to be treated, what nutrients go into it, how you're going to protect it from predators, you know, you become the mommy and daddy. So I mean, yeah, you're right. Those who want to detract and create the mantra of let's all be one and let's be a village, you're right. Very much would like that.
Yeah, some other really notable events is around this time, late 1700s, is the Illuminati is founded. Just a little bit after that, about 8 years or so, Noah Webster's Blue-backed Speller is written, which teaches principles of religion and morality. And that is the backbone to teaching kids how to read and write. It was a moral religious book. I've read it, and it's got all of the old Christian stuff in it.
Is it worth reading?
If you have a personal interest in education, it's interesting. It teaches kids how to talk with meter and rhyme, and it's a good basis for education as far as learning like alphabet stuff. You can find that on archive.org as well. But I guess it's not really required reading. It's basically just basic stuff that you would learn in school today, and at a young age.
Yeah, but you got to realize back then people were homeschooled, and most people in the 1800s, or many, also learned the trivium, and the single room schoolhouse people today think was a downfall. But
the single room schoolhouse was the community schoolhouse where the community decided what was going on there.
Right.
And it wasn't a state sponsored room with state sponsored curriculums. It was the families in that area.
Well, and that's what created the Industrial Revolution and boom in the United States was and in that situation you have the 8th graders who were as educated as bachelor's degree students today, but you had the 8th graders teaching the 1st graders and everybody teaching each other in between, and this whole back and forth is what, you learn the best by teaching others. So in 8th grade, you have a bachelor's level education. There's almost no bachelor's degree student today who could pass an 1895 8th grade graduation test.
It'd be interesting to see the percentages on that.
Yeah. Right. I probably couldn't do it. But, so these kids would teach each other. And because the older kids are teaching the younger kids, basically the teacher was just there as a moderator, as a facilitator, or as a moderator.
It's a complete teaching of the trivium, really, right from the grammar, logic, and then the rhetoric to be able to teach And for the
Boom.
older students, that's
There's one of Chris's just boom points.
It's modeling too. And it's,
Yeah.
right now we group them on the worst reason. It's their age. So how many times they've been around the sun or on the calendar, put them together. Where in the single classroom, I have a kid that was in second grade that used to come up to fifth grade in the mornings for math. And my big challenge was the class, don't let Bo beat you. And the second grader was excelling. And we have to open that up, but that's what happens in a single classroom is you allow it to move up because there's a whole array of people to learn from.
So it seems like there's two really prominent figures in the history of U.S. education, which is the guy that wrote Emile, starting off the French Revolution, or Emily, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, with his Social Contract. He publishes Permissive Education, which is child-centered, and says that teachers should avoid strict discipline and tiresome lessons. That's in 1762. And then there's the other guy, Pestalozzi, and he's publishing stuff in the early 1800s. And there's a lot of interesting information on his ideas for kids. But then all this, I'm trying to just rush through all this real quick because there's so much. So
Hey,
all
Steven.
this leads up. What's up?
I was just gonna have you touch on, just so we don't run out of time. I'd really like to hear what you had on your notes on sex ed, sexual education.
Oh, for sure. I meant to bring that up.
Yeah,
Especially as a
so
family.
I'm trying to get up to that. So we
Okay.
get all this stuff is happening. Things are happening. People don't want church. People want state. They don't want religion. They want education. And what happens is it starts going from education being about academic subjects, and it
Hold on a second, Stephen. Do you keep saying they want? Is it they want or are they programmed to? I mean, because, we talked about after World War II, both are working. So now they need someone to raise their kids. So, are we going back to, was there actually, is it demand or is it program?
There was a demand because people didn't like what the churches were doing. And people still don't like what the churches are doing. So I would assume that even some of our viewers, even as I look through some of this stuff, like I agree that some church groups are not necessarily the best, and so probably should be disbanded. But at the same time, I think that the church has a lot to offer as well. So still kind of on the fence about whether or not these guys are making a good move towards family or against it. But when you read stuff like this about establishing a system of state and bringing schools which exclude religion and stuff, it's not really family oriented. So that's kind of what turns me away from it. And then when you read stuff like this, so I'll continue and get towards the sex ed. Towards the end of the 1800s, we're no longer talking about religion and morality. We're talking about propaganda and how to influence people and what they think. We got the London School of Economics, established in 1895 by the Fabian Socialists. And we have Beatrice Webb in her book, A Life. I think that's her lifespan is 1858 to 1943. She says, "We can now feel assured that with the London School of Economics as a teaching body, the Fabian Society as a propagandist organization, the London City Council Progressives as an objective lesson in our electoral success, our books as the only elaborate and original work in economic fact and theory, no young man or woman who is anxious to study or to work in public affairs can come to fail under our influence." Which is, again, like, that's really great that they're empowering people to be successful in their economic plight, but at what cost are they requiring these people to be successful? And as we keep on going, we find out where the Intercollegiate Socialist Society in 1905 is put together by, I'm pretty sure you even have some of these people in your database, but Upton Sinclair, Jack London,
Yep.
Clarence Darrow, and others. The Intercollegiate Socialist Society, the ISS, establishes its permanent HQ at the Rand School of Social Science in 1908 and changes its name later to the League for Industrial Democracy. So they hide their socialism under democracy for a while. The Carnegie Foundation for Advancement in Teaching is also founded in 1905, which also becomes a huge social science influencer. NEA, the National Education Association, becomes a federally chartered organization in 1906. 1919, Progressive Education Association is founded by John Dewey. The New School for Social Research is founded in New York City. Co-founders include John Dewey and Charles Beard. 1919, same year, Norman Cousins will be a sponsor of the Norman Thomas Endowment at the New School, which members include Julian Huxley and more. So drink up, everyone. We got another Huxley aboard. So we keep on going. This is where the sex ed comes in, is right around that time. The National Education Association is the leader in education material for the state. They got chartered just a few years before this. They began teaching sex ed and hygiene in 1912. Calhoun's A Social History of the Family is published in 1919 as well. You go up to 1939 and the New York City Board of Education is instituting a 15-week training course for sex ed and public school teachers. So this is in between basically like the beginning of education where the family and the community taught everyone what to do.
What year was that again, Stephen?
That is 1939. They are instituting 15-week training courses for sex ed for public school teachers, so state-funded teachers.
So not for the kids, just for the teachers.
Yeah, just for the teachers teach the kids the sex ed that they're taught.
And then that goes in when these kids grow up. That goes into teaching all of the social justice warrior nonsense and feminism stuff and
gender is fluid.
Yeah, in the universities today. And then the kids actually, these are required courses that they have to take. So then all of this stuff is pushed on them, and then that goes into MGTOW and NoFap, etc.
So we have the baby boomers generation, which is supposedly around 1946 to 1964. About 67 or 76 million were born between those years. Actually, if you look at the education timeline, a lot of the changes happened during the wars. So we have the American Revolution kickoff in 1775, ending in 1783. And a lot of reform happened then. We also had the Civil War, which kicks off in 1861 to 1865, which is right after a lot of the major changes with the kids happened. What was it? We got kindergarten gets put in 1857, and then we have a Civil War 5 years later.
Look at the birth rates. Look at the birth rates when you just compare it from the 60s to the current birth rates.
So yeah, if we're looking at the birth rates, we look at 1914 to 1918 is World War I, which is right before what would be almost considered the second wave of educational reform. And then 1939 to 1945 is World War II, which is happens just as they start tampering with the state-sponsored sex ed. And then after that is the baby boomers. After that war ends, because they wanted to get more people for the war, because back then you could only win a war with more people, because we didn't have the technology that we do today where a small group of people could kill many instead of many killing a small group.
Hey, can I share something? I want to share this thing right here with you guys. It's this graphic. Can you guys see that right there?
Yep.
And basically, if you look at the percent of births out of wedlock, because I'm going to pull us back to family here, because I guess we want to be in wedlock when we have children. At least that was the tradition. But look back at the 1964, these blue ones. These are all different countries. Here's the United States. The percent out of wedlock was probably 6-7%. And then just look how it changed for 2014. It's up to about 40%. And this isn't even breaking it down to more programmable cultures and demographics. And so what you got to do when you're using the trivium is what things occurred. Well, we went through massive trauma with these world wars, the structure of homes being decimated by making the wives go through love of their country and husbands earn money. Husbands come back. You see the production code getting kicked under when you read Dr. E. Michael Jones, and he'll talk about that. So then the owners of the television start to put their programs in the 60s and 70s, and you could just look at it. So the births didn't stop so much. I mean, I got another one on fertility rate here where you look at 60s down to now, and it's a massive drop. And we get in the arcade, Caleb, because people are so selective that they say, I'm only going to have one kid in this world because I could give them a great life. And then that one kid has a great life, becomes a lawyer, and they don't want to have any kids. And now your bloodline's dead. So, I mean, there's just so.
If you guys want to hear more about the sex ed in school, here's one by John D. Rockefeller Jr. If you guys are interested in that.
Yeah.
He's kind of a big name.
Turn off the share there, Mark.
Oh, sorry about that.
We got curriculums are being drafted to indoctrinate our children in what John D. Rockefeller Jr. calls the church of all people. This is in 1962. Plans are being made to set up regional world universities whose objectives would...
Hold on, Steve. Mark, it's at the top of the screen. Mark, hit end share.
I'm not seeing it, damn it.
Hover the mouse over and hit end share.
I gotta get my screen bigger. Guess I shouldn't have shared. I'll just close the whole thing.
I don't think that'll work.
Well, no, you need to end share, stop sharing.
I know, I'm just not. Let me see.
You got this, Mark.
Here, I'm gonna go out and come back in.
All right.
Yeah, I'll just say what I gotta say while he figures this out.
Go for it.
So plans are being set up by John D. Rockefeller Jr. to set up his Church of All People, where these world universities are being set up to instruct in all religions, but not make religion an aim, to build a world outlook and to teach the physiological, psychological, and spiritual aspects of sex. So that's where John D. Rockefeller, the Rockefellers are creating curriculums for us to understand the physiological, psychological, and spiritual aspects of sex. And now we've got like 700 genders or something.
Yeah.
So
and you're assigned one at birth, apparently. So
right,
so
you weren't born with genitalia that decided that for you. By God, it was just.
It was a white man ploy. Yeah,
it was a white man's. It was a doctor's ploy to trick you into being a boy or a girl at birth. You idiot! If you believe that.
Yeah. Heaven forbid you don't associate with the gender you were assigned at birth.
Hey, and you know what people say about like closet gays and stuff? What about, why can't you be a male and still be kind of feminine?
You can.
I know, but people say, no, you're gay. You're gay.
Yeah.
Don't stop denying it, man. Just change your gender.
Well, let's talk about the Sex Information and Education Council of the United States, SICUS for short. That's founded in 1964 with the yin yang as its official emblem.
Wow.
In addition to promoting comprehensive sex education in schools, the position statements will say it is the position of SICUS that contraceptive services should be available to all, including minors, who should enjoy the same rights of free and independent access to contraceptive care as others do. And it's also the position of SICUS that the use of explicit sexual materials, aka porn, can serve a variety of important needs in the lives of countless individuals.
And now we have Oprah Winfrey on television, telling parents how to introduce their children to pornography.
Really?
So 5 years later, in 1969, we've got this quote by Lester Kirkendall and Ruth Osborne, who say, and this is just within the same decade, to make the elimination of premarital pregnancy, venereal disease, or divorce, the main purpose of sex education is to make certain its failure. So to make sure that they can eliminate premarital pregnancy, STDs, and divorces, they are going to make it so that all these kids are miseducated on sex education, which is just obnoxious with the growth of sex ed.
And what people need to realize is the goal here is hypersexualization, because if you're going out with many partners and doing all of this stuff, you're not settling down with one person and building something real with someone who you grow old with and die with, and you look back and look at my family, look at my grandchildren, look at my great-grandchildren. You get to the end of the road and you're like, like these homosexuals, well, who's going to take care of me when I'm old? I got no family. I got nothing. So you have to rely on a socialist or communist government to take care of you. So that's why the socialist communist governments promote all of this stuff, is because it creates a feedback system where, you know, more people are going to feed into this type of government until the whole thing collapses. But because they don't produce children, they don't have, and therefore no family, they have to have a socialist or communist, you know, Satanist, whatever you want to call it, type of government to sustain themselves later on in life.
So, are you familiar with the Kinsey reports?
Probably.
They were co-authored by Wardell Pomeroy, who also wrote Boys and Sex.
That's a big can of worms. The Kinsey, his pedophilia, and all the sex.
So he's a spokesman for the publisher's library division, and says that the book has been used in high school libraries and sex education classrooms. In the book, he says that there are some boys who will build up a strong emotional attachment to a particular animal and will have intercourse with it on a regular basis. If this kind of sexual behavior should ever happen to a boy, he would do best to keep knowledge of it from other people so he will not be ridiculed, and at the same time feel secure in his self-knowledge that he is not a monster, no matter what society's attitude may be.
Very loving.
Yeah, Time magazine quotes Pomeroy on April 14th in 1980, saying, Pomeroy, the co-author of the Kinsey Report, saying that it is time to admit that incest need not be a perversion or a symptom of mental illness.
Wow.
Incest between children and adults can sometimes be beneficial.
And that's you know, and Time was owned by Henry Luce and C.D. Jackson. C.D. Jackson was the head of psych warfare for the, oh goodness, for psych operations like Buchenwald, etc.
These people are telling us incest and porn and all of these things that don't have to do with reproduction are actually really important for reproduction.
Do you see how irrelevant their opinions are? Their opinions are so irrelevant unless they control the things that we're addicted to.
Well, Mark, I'd have to argue against you there and say that these opinions are very relevant because of the effects that they've had on people throughout the decade.
But they've always had that opinion. They just didn't have the means, the delivery system. This is why I'm saying the reason why this is so important to know is that the same people that have these philosophies that Stephen's exposing are the same people on the many spokes of mind control that are controlling what's going into your mind.
So, no more mammy, no more pappy.
Ain't we happy? Sing it, Chris.
Exactly.
Reader Digest in June of that same year quotes the Psychist board member, same guy, Lester Kirkendall, saying that most people have the vague hope that sex education will somehow cure half the world's ills, reduce casual sex experience, cut down on illegitimate births, eliminate venereal disease. To be perfectly blunt about it, we have no way of knowing that sex education will solve any problems. And this is just a couple of years after he says, but we had to make sure it was failing. We don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to make sure it fails anyways. It's almost comical, but at the same time, a bit sad.
That guy, whoever wrote that, is probably a high priest now because he says it and then it implemented. It's like, yes.
So there's Dr. Daniel Levitin, who teaches sex and death education at the University of Maryland. He delivers an address titled "The Role of the Schools in Providing Death Education." And this is at the Hamline Symposium on Death Education in St. Paul, Minnesota, in which he asserts, "We are very much interested in educating parents in order to reduce the spread of that dread disease, hang-up-itis," which is a made-up disease.
So what they do is first they pretend that truth doesn't exist, and then anybody who believes in truth and who knows there's rights and wrongs and living in truth, is this behavior truthful, is it dishonest? And then what they do is they call it hang-up-itis if you follow truth. You know, and this is the same crap that you see out of, changing, I wish I had the quote in front of me, out of Changing Images of Man from SRI. You know, and speaking of that, you know, so all of this stuff, all of these groups that Stephen has been talking about tie into Tavistock, SRI, Frankfurt School, and the Royal Society. which are the same organizations that we're constantly focusing on over and over ad infinitum.
These are all the characters that are just on the borderline of it, connecting the entertainment industry to the education industry.
And they're international characters. They're doing this in other countries.
Yep.
Correct.
And they're doing it in England, basically they were like the little brother of American education, and they learned everything.
I think the only European nation resisting now is Poland.
Potentially, I'm not familiar on that. But the end of that quote is public schools would do well to develop related parent education programs in such myth-shrouded areas as human sexuality and death education. So this dude's just obsessed with sex and death and wants to educate the parents before and as well as the kids at the same time.
Hey, look, we're almost at 7:30. How long are we trying to go? Because
we should probably wrap it up here in a few minutes.
I really want to go because it's like we pile up all the turds and everybody gets to smell it, and then we give them no alternative. There's no solution. So we're just like, see, you live in a bunch of crap. People enjoy it. Live in Logos. Goodbye. So I say, does anybody have solutions? As I do, what I'm trying to do. But what about you? What you four say?
Well, I would encourage people to look into some of this stuff if they have the free time, because just arming yourself with the knowledge of what the hell happened is more than most people have. You can't stand up against something and not understand it all where it came from. Again, just one quick more note before we wrap this up with Jan and talking about how these people are all related to some of his research is we got Dr. John Money, who is a Johns Hopkins University psychologist who testifies in federal court saying that erotic girly magazines could be a valuable aid for teachers in instructing high school students about sex. And John Money is described as a leveler of sexual taboos and an avowed bisexual. So we got this bisexual leveler of sexual taboos.
Who needs to educate your children, folks, about sex? Yeah, do you want a pervert educating your children about sex?
He's like, you guys, I don't know, but it's porn. It might really
porn is good. Who was that guy? I had some articles. Maybe that's that same guy that showed up. I posted some articles from him maybe 6 or 8 months ago on Facebook of this guy who was, teaching porn and all of this stuff in school, and he even had like Pizzagate logos and stuff on his in his stuff.
Don't judge, Jan. Don't judge.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have a whole nother show just for this education.
Well, I say this: pornography is a big one, and skipping over that would really be a disservice. I would say it's in the top 3 destroyers of families.
Yeah.
The top 3 destroyers of your alphaness as a male. The top 3 destroyers of your ability to be a good father and have relationships with either sex. So that's a huge one, and I'm glad we didn't really hit that one because that could be a whole show.
Well, we should do a show on that. Maybe we can get, I interviewed Gary Wilson about 4 or 5 years ago on porn. Maybe I can get him back on. Just a heads up that you'll get to learn a lot about people's private habits when you do a show on that.
All right, so solutions. Anybody solutions? Are we just going to end with the pile, or do we have solutions?
Well,
solutions.
Solutions.
The grammar.
Settle down, have a family, start working on, thinking 7 generations out. What are you doing to make sure that your family survives for the next 7 generations? Are you, going to gay clubs, or are you planning a family, planting food in your yard, teaching your children real education, showing them all of the social engineering that's going on so that they know what to avoid, all the landmines and things that are out there. Being as fathers, as male role models, being the best dad that we can be. When I was a kid, there was a plaque on my step-grandfather's wall that said, "Any man can be a father. It takes someone special to be a dad." So, start focus on being dads and not just, our males, from the RK theory, our males just going about impregnating, 15 women and having, 15 baby mamas and this and that. Build something. Think about, the future. I guess, You know, and then these are fathers, their children go off in gangs, and half of them are dead by the time they're 15 or 18.
Well, K fathers, you got to have lots of children though. So the K fathers, if you're not playing that game, you're going to be outnumbered just from, you know, the pure stupidity of the numbers game.
I guess
Well-
another really big thing is just knowing that there are people out there trying to take your kids from you. They don't want you having your kids. They want to have your kids.
And they
That is
want
not a
any kids born in incubators that they can totally control as well. They want the parents totally out of the scenario because it ruins their little commie, socialist, transhumanist, CIA, whatever agenda.
Yeah, they think they know better than you.
My big thing is that it's so hard to learn when there aren't a lot of models. So it's as we learn, as our audience learns, as we constantly gather more grammar, as Stephen was giving us lots of grammar, as we gather that, you got to put it into action. If it ain't changing your life and making it more attractive and you're less depressed, you're healthier, you're filled with more love, then people say, what are you doing? If my son, if you're just talking about it and not living it, that's not very attractive. And this is why the Gospels, when he said the Gospels is like in an effed up world, when you don't have a lot of great examples, you could look at the Gospels. It is a program. It is a spell in a sense that you're looking at what living in harmony of truth is. And when in a world that's been inverted, it's controlled, you could look at those Gospels and really, in some simplicity and some parables, learning how to live your life and then start putting in practice. And if it makes your life better and you less stress and you don't have to worry because you're living the truth, then you're going to understand it. Otherwise, you're just gathering in here, put it into practice. We talk about families, really get off your ass and go and start looking for those women. I know it's brutal. I'm so glad, thank God I'm married with kids already. But if we don't start making it happen and making people go, damn, I want to live like that guy, all the talking about it ain't going to do it.
Correct. Well said.
Well, and one thing that people really need to realize is that this is a pretty much a war that's being waged against us. And, you know, as the darkness will always, it never sleeps. It's always trying to take over the light. So it takes you know, people to step up, strong people who live in the truth to step up and to do something about it. And, you know, part of the thing that we got to do is the grammar, and the other part of the thing that we need to do is we need to actually figure these things out. We need to find who the parasites are, who are just lying, cheating, stealing, and we need to expose them. That's huge.
Allowing trannies to teach your kids with dildos.
Yeah. So like we can have all the responsible people in the world, but if all the responsible people are, you know, just keeping to themselves, and, you know, it's not going to do us any good. So we got to realize it's not only is it just a war, it's also a genetic war. It's a war between the liars, cheaters, and stealers that can't compete in a free market. So of course they don't want a free market. They want to use the state. So we got to start realizing we got to treat it the same way that, you know, that we talk about it. We have to actually do something about it.
Live it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I have tons and tons of theories of how to do that. I know we don't have time to get into any of that, but hopefully we can talk about that stuff in the future, like real serious hardcore solutions that may work, just may work.
All right. So next week's show, what would we like to discuss? Chris, put you on the spot.
Oh, geez. Oh, geez. I have no idea. You guys come up with some crazy topics that are far beyond me most of the time. So I'm just happy to be here. And my only advice to people is just live fixed to reality. Do not deny reality. You'll be better off for it. So whatever you guys want to talk about next week, give you a thumbs up.
Well, you'll probably be here, so
I hope so. Yeah.
All right, Caleb, any ideas?
Let's see. Just to mention, we didn't cover tattoos and piercings.
Yeah, that's another important one too.
That was one. We didn't really cover We got white guilt on here.
Rule of fathers being decimated.
Yeah, we've got white guilt and white privilege, or another big ones. It's like, so because you take care of your family better, you're privileged because of your skin color. No, take better care of your families, idiots. Stop blame casting. This is part of the blame casting game that disempowers people from taking responsibility from their own behavior. Everything is the white man's fault. Rather than looking at yourself and your life and saying, you know what, maybe it's all my iniquitous behavior that's causing my jacked up life. And so, when you get that and you start acting in truth, then things will probably start getting better. But if all you're doing is blame casting and blaming white men for every problem that you've had, even taboo subject, even slavery and getting enslaved comes from or is because of iniquitous behavior. So if you don't want to be enslaved, then stop the behavior. And if you were enslaved, stop blaming everybody else for your behavior. So, all right.
It's all living in truth, and that's what we're at Logos Roundtable. We struggle to find it like everybody else.
Mark, any ideas for next show?
Oh man, we're a bunch of men, so I think sticking to the man perspective is a good one. I don't know,
I agree with that. I mean, I'm not against a woman's show breaking off from this, but I think a guy's show is important in this era of
one of the
decimated males.
So one of the things that's really tied to this is this. I mean, we live in the mountains, Jan, right? And me, I hate going down the hill. But when I do, and I haven't gone down the hill in a few months, I'm getting like total culture shock. Like, holy crap! I understand the gender confusion now, because even from my own eyes, living in truth, I can't tell. And so I think one of the things that would be interesting for us to talk about is what the betification and that thing.
Betification. He just coined a new word.
Yeah, copyright that.
Yeah.
Betification.
Following Caleb's model of being a K person, I'm trying to get selective. As an intellectual, when I kind of went through this, we saw this kind of androgynous male coming through. And I'm like, ooh, maybe I should be less aggressive. I should be more a listener, and I'll get the girls to come towards me. And I'm seeing these total beta males hanging out with the most beautiful women. But then after a few years, I realized they never date that beta male. He's just the friend, and they feel safe with him. But I mean, talking about that topic could be really fun for us as men to talk about and get some input.
Yeah, don't let them read 3%. What is it, 3% man or whatever? That's type of stuff, which actually kind of shows you the erroneous thinking of a lot of beta males and how they get caught in those positions.
And it's been completely advertised towards these individuals too. I mean, if you look at some of the like BuzzFeed, these soy boys that get up there and try to present to guys how to be a guy, and it's not very encouraging, that's for sure. And then the whole idea of, again, in popular culture, the promotion of cuckoldry, where that might even be a good thing. They're trying to present this, even in Netflix ads, they hint towards these types of things, and it's absolutely disgusting. It's being promoted to guys. So you want to get close to the girl, and you're a pathetic male. And speaking of pathetic males, do as thou wilt, right? Comes from a pathetic male who liked to be demeaned by women. It wasn't Crowley, didn't he get off on being stepped on by women? It's my understanding, at least. So you see these people
and feces and all kinds of other stuff got them off.
So yes, yeah, exactly. So you see these types of people being promoted as good people, and Jay-Z's got the emblem on his shirt now, and they're promoting this type of.
Hey, Beyonce just got sued for witchcraft too. Ding ding.
Yeah. Well, crazy stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Well, nothing solid. We'll try to figure out something during the week, folks, for next weekend. Thanks so much for participating. Thanks for all the show. Caleb, how can people contribute to you directly?
PayPal is mick.caleb@gmail.com.
And Chris Mayville.
The Mayv, THEMAYV @gmail.com. Thank you.
And Steve?
I got the paypal.me/President Trip.
And that's 2 P's or 1 P?
That's PRESIDENT all one word.
And Mark?
Just give the logos.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thanks, everyone, for your contributions and tuning in tonight. And thanks for all the great comments in there. Anyway,
Go start a family.
yeah,
If you're
go out
seeking
and
truth.
start a family.
If you're seeking truth, find another one and seek it together.
You know what? And Pete, if you're worried about having more women on the show, you need to get more women in life, dude. So like, stop being a beta and get
I'm
out
surrounded by women in my house.
there. Sorry to pick on you there, buddy, in the chat. But anyway, all right. See you all next week. And it's been good. Take care.
See you later.
Bye.